if he wins, in effect, he's going to be a lame duck. He doesn't have to run for re-election. And so he can do a lot of things. He'll have a freer hand, in fact, than he would otherwise. It'll leave J.D. Vance with a harder job, but there's a big opportunity to fix a lot of these things, maybe once in a lifetime. If we don't fix them, this whole debt going to
implode.
Monster is going to suck us down.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. I got a really interesting guest. His name is Bill Walton. Bill, you have a podcast, but you've done so much more. You find him at the BillWaltonShow.com. And it's seasoned entrepreneur, Bill, the CEO of Allied Capital Corporation for many years, and basically part of the Trump transition team. You've done a lot, and really great to have you on here because it looks like there's an inevitability about to take place in the election, although elections are like horse races. You never know when one of those horses is going to get drugged or taken out before it crosses the finish line, as they've already tried to do here. But we got to talk about what you foresee happening, and is the economy hopeless at this point? Is the country hopeless? Is there anything that can be done to right this sinking ship?
Well, I think there is, and I'm quite hopeful about Trump's prospects next week. Lots of people who are close to it. I'm based here in the D.C. area, and the feeling is he's going to win. But I have insider information. I have a dentist who is dentist to all the Democrat operatives who work for Obama and then Biden, and they're in Northwest, and they are terrified. And they're quite concerned that this thing is going south on them. And they've been living in a honeypot now for 15 years, 20 years here, and they're worried about the game over scenario. And the other thing that makes me optimistic is if Trump wins, when he wins, there are a lot of people that he made a lot of people mistakes in 2016. It took a long time to get over it and get started. And then, of course, they attacked him with the Russia thing. I think he's all ready for that now. And he's got, I can think of 15, 20 people who probably come into the administration who get what needs to be done. They've been there. Now, I think the odds of making some changes are good.
All right. Well, we certainly need it. I don't want to talk about personalities and cults of personality, all that, but it's good to hear that your dentist is getting us some golden inside information as he takes the gold out of their pockets. And they should be scared, because what's happened in this country is, the policies that have been pursued have got us at the brink of bankruptcy. But like Trump has said, he didn't need to do this. And I'm sure he's doubted himself for doing it many, many times since. But it's a calling for him. It's kind of a mission. And, it's going to be interesting. But like I said, we're not into like election politics and all that. We're into policy. That's something that you have firsthand information and insight into. One of the things people complain about, Bill, it's so hard to get the government to do anything, to change the government. One policy that Trump is promoting now is elimination of the income tax. Are you and I ever going to live to see that?
Oh, my gosh, I hope so. The night when we put the income tax in place, there's obviously the money part of it, but the income tax is just an unbelievable intrusion into our personal privacy. All of a sudden, the federal government has the right to take apart your sources of income, and they know everything about you. And there are lots of other things afoot. If Kamala ends up winning, where the Treasury's got something called the Corporate Transparency Act, which Biden signed into law, and that would require most of the small businesses in America, some 30, 40 million, to disclose the beneficial ownership of them, and a lot of other things that would be intrusive. And so, I do know that's the kind of thing that when Trump wins, they're gonna make a target. Now, getting rid of the IRS or the income tax, I don't think we get enough revenue if we go to tariffs to substitute for the income tax, given the unbelievably big, size of the government. But I like the way they're thinking about it. But the tariff idea is really, it's about revenue, but I think it's mainly about making sure that we rehabilitate American business here. And we've transported most of the business, a lot of the businesses and the jobs offshore, and we've got to bring that back. And I think that'll be a big step in the right direction.
Certainly. So probably a combination of tariffs and a VAT, national sales tax, if you will. Probably what it's going to have to be. But if we get Elon Musk in charge of government efficiency, I mean, look, the most productive auto manufacturing plants in the world, the most productive one happens to be the Tesla plant in Shanghai. Right. But it's not that far ahead of Austin, and it's not that far ahead of Fremont, California. Quality is a little higher there because it was built later than Fremont, but the Austin quality just as good. So can you imagine Elon Musk being in charge of cutting government programs?
They say, go ahead.
Yeah, there's one other thing. There was a case that took place during Nixon's tenure, and I know that President Trump is aware of it. That's the Impoundment Authority case. I don't remember the name of it, so forgive me for that. But basically said, if Congress authorizes the spending, you got to spend it. And the case was never properly tested. And look, to just say, all right, Congress, you allocated $6 billion, but we're only going to spend $4 billion of it. Sue me. Can we look forward to that, you think, in a second Trump administration?
I think it's on the radar screen, definitely. But you've got to love Elon Musk's answer. They said, well, how much money can you cut out of a $7 trillion budget? I think that's the number. It could be 20 million, 20 trillion. He said $2 trillion, which is a big number. But it's not just waste, fraud, and abuse. He also, in another conversation, threw out the notion that there's some 275 or 300 federal agencies, and if you want to look at a definition of immortality, it's a federal agency. Once these things get created, they never go away. And I would bet there are probably 75 to 100 agencies which may have had a good reason to come into existence, but they don't have any reason to be right now. And there's a big opportunity to not only cut employment, but also restructure, the regulatory framework to make it, more compatible for growing a business.
Yeah, I did. I put this question to ChatGPT. I said, list 100 federal agencies that are useless and could easily be cut. And I'm going to give you just a few of these agencies. You're going to get a real kick out of it. Do you think we could live without the Appalachian Regional Commission, the Denali Commission, Exim Bank? Exim Bank's just corporate welfare. How about the Postal Service? Yeah, well, we need somebody to deliver the mail, but I think Jeff Bezos could do it better than the government, right? It still
already is.
OPIC, U.S. Institute for Peace. It's not doing a real good job now. Office of Navajo and Hopi Indian Relocation. That seems like an urgent national concern, doesn't it? And I mean, it just goes on and on and on and on and on here, like 100 of them. They're talking like things like the FA, because it's duplicated by other things and private could do it. Office of Fossil Energy. I mean, it must be manned by fossils, right? Or how about the Office of Legacy Management? What the heck? Do you even know what that does, Bill?
It's managing somebody's legacy in government. I don't know. Maybe it's managing, overseeing, protecting all these obsolete agencies.
Yeah. But
their job is to stand guard to make sure nobody shuts them down. I don't know. We'll have to get rid of that one first.
The one I want to get rid of is the Department of Redundancy Department. Because it's definitely redundant.
This is ChatGPT. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think of that as not really. I didn't realize it was a libertarian. This is good stuff.
All right, so we could further refine this and say, pretend you are Rand Paul, or just pretend you're Rand Paul.
That's the way to do it. Yeah.
Or if I were Ludwig von Mises, what would be left of the federal government? You could do that, because then it has to put on its other hat and get away from its leftist programming. But how about the Export Control and Related Border Security Assistance Program? It's the list. It would be comical, Bill, if it wasn't true.
Well, it wasn't obscene. I mean, that's the issue. I mean, that's, it's comical if you're sort of doing what we're doing, but if you run a business, and a small business, medium-sized business, and you fall under the predations of one of those agencies, you got a problem, because they can tell you to do all sorts of things that don't make any sense. And and that's the hidden tax on America now, is all these agencies put out. One of them puts out a bad rule, or a rule that may be even, with a good intent, but then all of a sudden you're supposed to comply with it. And if you get 100 agencies doing that, all of a sudden all you're doing is filling out paperwork.
How about like one of Trump's most successful policies last administration was putting in the executive order that for every new rule you want to impose or implement, you got to get rid of 2. And it actually was so effective that most agencies were getting rid of 20 new rules for every rule they implemented. How about for every new rule you implement, you got to get rid of 100 employees and 100 existing regulations?
Well, think of it, what Elon Musk did at Twitter. What did he do? Reduce the headcount by 80%, 90%.
And nobody noticed.
8,000 employees, and it's taken it down to about 1,000, and it's doing just fine with that streamlined structure. I know Elon wouldn't talk about this if he weren't serious, and if you get him thinking this way about these agencies, I think this could be think about our budget deficit. Think about all the bad things that people think you can't fix. Well, if you do all this, you could.
Yeah, and he's managed, if you saw the last Tesla earnings call, and if caught it, the average price of a Tesla to produce is $35,000. Now, granted, they don't have unions, they don't have legacy costs like medical and pensions and all that good stuff. But nonetheless, the price has come down while inflation has been going up. Bill, 2 things. Deficit, inflation. All right, like, I know Trump's saying, let's just drill and we can, bring down inflation because energy costs and all that. But you and I both know it's got to take a massive cut in government expenditures, unnecessary, wasteful, and some that even maybe aren't wasteful, but just aren't useful. And that's where the blowback is going to come from, because like you said, your dentist is worried because all of his, most of his patients are probably going to be out of a job here if Trump is elected.
Well, and they should be out of a job, because when I came to Washington, I guess in 1996, I've been here several times, but it was Potomac, Maryland, which is this big, expensive suburb north of the city, had these huge McMansions, and it was just really stunning. And I asked, I was new to the D.C. area, and I said, what's paying for all that? And they said, well, that's K Street money. And what we've seen now in the last 3 or 4 years is those big mansions have been considered teardowns, and they're putting up even bigger ones up in Potomac, and a lot of that's coming from things like the totally misnamed Inflation Reduction Act, which is basically the Green New Deal on steroids, which is added at trillions of dollars. And John Podesta's got a $400 billion fund for the projects for the Democrat donors have that they're purportedly green energy. So all that sort of stuff could go away. I mean, the whole green energy piece is a massive reallocation of capital, both private capital and government capital. And if we just shutting that down would, I think, do a lot to the budget deficit.
Yeah, we got like hundreds of billions in corporate welfare every year taking place, right? These companies, it's one thing you give to the least needy, you could at least justify that. But how do you justify these massive subsidies and everything else?
Well, because they can afford the lobbying firms and afford the contribution to the senators and the congressmen, and they're the only ones talking to them, and so they end up getting these handouts, and the rest of the country can't afford to be here and do that, and so they've been the losers. Let's turn that around.
Yeah. So like the Boeings of the world, and you see what our subsidies have done. And the banking industry, everybody, they get these subsidies and then they up their executive compensation and their stock options, everything else. I mean, I do believe that you run a successful company, you deserve to be extremely well rewarded because it's very difficult, especially in these times. But, the taxpayer shouldn't be paying for it.
Well, that'll be a new paradigm. Now, the thing we do, Donald Trump was not exactly a cost cutter last time he was on.
No.
And I don't want to cost him any votes because we have to win, but he's not talking about entitlement reform. He's not talking about any budget cuts. He can't. I mean, that's political suicide. But on the other hand, if he wins, in effect, he's going to be a lame duck. He doesn't have to run for re-election. And so he can do a lot of things. He'll have a freer hand, in fact, than he would otherwise. It'll leave J.D. Vance with a harder job, but there's a big opportunity to fix a lot of these things, maybe once in a lifetime. If we don't fix them, this whole debt going to
implode.
Monster is going to suck us down.
Yeah. Yeah. So, the federal government, Bill, still owns 45% of the state of California, most of Nevada, all these states that it wasn't supposed to wind up owning, it owns. So why don't we just sell off 10% of California? Would that be such a bad thing?
Well, I can give you a great thing. There's this totally mistaken notion that if you put land in federal hands, it's preserving it and they're going to nurture the environment with this federal ownership. It's just the opposite. If you put land in private hands, private owners do an awful lot to make it more productive and make it more environmentally, whatever the word is, better, greener. And so, I mean, it would be a win-win. You get, I used to be in the merger and acquisition business, and it wasn't the question of just buying and selling companies. The way you think about it really is you're trying to take one business that may be struggling or something like that, and you try to put that business into stronger hands, people who know what to do with it, and hopefully they'll take that and build it up into something better, more profitable, better for shareholders, and so on and so forth. And I think the same thing. I think it's a great idea. The federal lands, let's raise some capital and put it in the hands of people who could do something good with it.
And it's all the western states.
Yeah.
Idaho, the Dakotas. Maybe people don't want to live in those places necessarily, but increasing the supply of land, which eventually would increase the supply of housing, all these things. And, to me, the biggest issues campaign are, immigration, obviously, the economy, inflation. Inflation's a cycle. I don't know that the government really can bring it down. It just kind of lasts for 20 or 30 years, as in the past. but crime, all these things. We just seen like deviant behavior, like Daniel Patrick Moynihan used to say, we're defining deviancy down, and shoplifting is decriminalized in a lot of states. And you got these DAs who don't believe it's their job.
Only if you steal more than $1,000 worth of stuff. I mean,
good point.
If you keep it under 1,000, I guess it's decriminalized.
But,
I mean, come on, this is insane.
Yeah, and
I can see people in the stores with their iPhone calculator working. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm getting up to $9.95, and we've stolen enough. Time to get out of here.
They'll knock the charges down anyway, the Soros DAs. But I was in a CVS in Woodland Hills, California, and I tell you, everything in that store was locked up. Yeah. And I was there a little later at night. I had to wait 15 minutes for a guy to unlock the case to get some eye drops that were $20. In Florida here, there are some things that are locked up, like that are high shoplift items, like razor blades, all right, and like certain eye care products. But it's a small section of the store. Everything else, it's like open. And, you know, the self-checkout cashiers, we can have them here in Florida, but in California or New York, you can't risk them because they increase shoplifting by 50%.
Well, yeah, and there's stores, you know, here in the D.C. area, they're just shutting the stores down. They can't afford to keep them open. So all these things that are supposed to protect criminals or whatever have ended up really hurting most of the inner city communities here in D.C.
And everyone, the waste of time of having to wait for them to open something up and get it, and you just say, the heck with it, I'll buy it on Amazon.
You know, but you think about the trouble the country's in. What we're describing, they're target-rich opportunities to make it better. I mean, it doesn't take a lot to sort of say, well, let's change some of the rules about crime. And you know, they did it a couple times in New York. I mean, Giuliani turned it around, and Bloomberg did a pretty good job with it. You can fix a city if you've got the right people in charge.
So true what you're saying. Like, I remember the city before Giuliani, I remember after, and the left vilifies him and gives him no credit for saving their haven. And after a couple of terms of Comrade Bill de Blasio, and now this new guy, the place is completely unlivable, becoming more unlivable by the day.
Well, yeah. And, you know, there are a lot of, yes, it is. And the problem is that we talk about governance. We're talking about Trump and the Fed, you know, what the feds can do. And I think the state legislatures and some of the smaller cities can make these changes. I don't see changing big city government much. I mean, Democrats have got a lock hand on it, and they're not showing any signs of paying a price for all the damage they've done.
Well, the price is migration from these blue states to the red states. And of course, here in Florida, Texas, various other states, Tennessee, you see mass migration where people are just throwing up their hands. And I know a number of people left California, and that's it. Well, Bill, it's really been a pleasure having you on the show, and we will definitely have you on again. We definitely got some interesting times ahead. You find Bill at thebillwaltonshow.com. The link is in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Please sign up for a free newsletter. And if you got any questions for Bill, myself, the email address is kl@kerrylutz.com. Bill, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much for coming on.
Great. Love to be here.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.